Traffic was not our friend, is that correct?
No, it was not. Believe it or not, I am late today because I was mid-inspection. But I was late to that inspection because there were like 3 accidents on the way down. It was wild today.
Thank you for being here. My name's Gordon Lassing, and some of you know me, most of you probably don't. I was forced into being the vice president of this association. I wasn't here, by the way, did you know that? This is a warning for next year, be in attendance at all times. This is, we're excited to have Jenna with us. This is going to be an outstanding opportunity for us. And I just wanted to we'll get rolling on this and let her take her time. What we're going to be doing, I'm going to have a couple of discussions with her, with all of us right now, because she just came in, so I can make sure that she has everything that she needs. But then I want to kind of get to know you guys a little bit for a couple of minutes and kind of help Jenna to understand the cross section of this first. So in a minute we'll get that put down, and then hopefully we'll talk a little about the forum and how we're going to handle this, because the presidency's powers go in their head. So they've decided to make some rules when we have visiting guests. Instead of an all-out, I've got an opinion, like Beaky versus out, don't they? So we have something. What we're going to do is we're going to let Jenna teach us, and then afterwards, we'll talk about this in a second, but afterwards, then make notes, and then we'll have a question time, so that she can really get thoroughly completed with stuff that she has planned for us. Deal? If that's okay with you, is that all right?
That is A-okay with me. I've got some exciting announcements for this presentation, so I'm glad to have the chance to share those. And yeah, we'll make sure there'll be plenty of time to answer everyone's questions.
When do you want? Okay, you guys, here we go. How much time do you want?
I will take up as much time as you allow me, so give me a limit or I will just talk.
Okay, this is what we're going to do, okay? The president isn't here. We can do whatever we want. I'm not going to take the funds and get some pizza coming in here, and then we'll have to. How much time do you want? Now, this is how it lays out. We're going to let Jenna, she is the experienced one, mixed with those of you that have a lot of experience, and a lot of you that have a lot of questions. Okay? That takes some time. But what I think is best to do is have a set time, like let's say an hour. This is an example. And then we have time when we can ask questions to Jenna, and also an open forum. Because a lot of times she might say, what experience do you guys have with this? And it's fantastic for me. I've only been 3 years into this. This is where I learned. I just absorbed all the experiences that you guys have taught me. And this has been an interesting year for me. 5 swarms in my backyard. You said 5. I've got 3 out of the 5. I started with 3 hives. I have 7 now. I'm selling 4 of them. I've got buyers. I'm over my head. This is not. I told our Baptist student here, I said, how you doing? Do you think you got it? And he goes, I go, you don't know what you don't know. It's an experience. So, if it's okay, I'm asking for opinions. We'll give her an hour. Is that fair?
Yes.
Is that good? Okay. And then after that, we'll stop, and then we'll go and open it up. And when you leave, you can leave anytime you want. And this is one part, I'm the one that's closing up. I will stay until your networking is done. So if a couple of you want to get over here and talk to the veterans, I'll sit here and wait and learn to wait. Is that fair? Including if Jenna wants to stick around and just have an open discussion with people. That's what I love doing, is afterwards give us some personal insights. If that goes with you, Jenna, then away we go. All right, my friends, so here's the rules.
All right.
Here we go. We're on film. That's good.
Camera back there.
Watch your language.
Microphone on.
Microphone right
I
here.
see it working.
There's your agenda.
All
Now,
right.
this agenda, to give her this agenda, obviously there's some ground rules we're going to try. Please refrain. I was in medicine before I retired, and at medical conferences, you never, ever, ever, ever interrupted the speaker. because they had it so rich in time and with the information. And then they opened it up for a half hour or something so individuals ask questions, and that's really sweet. So I think we're gonna try that because sometimes it gets out of control. People just go, and they just have so many questions. So if you refrain, even if it's a hot spot in something that she said, unless she calls on you.
There will also be some natural breaks throughout where I'll, as we're transitioning subjects, I'm gonna go, hey, does anybody have questions on the thing we just talked about? And that'll be a great time, because I know it's gonna be information overload for a lot of y'all. So, hang on to the question until we get to one of those break spots.
Yeah, breaks are after, because at some point, we've seen it before, once it starts, it's a tsunami. And I might have to stand up and take the hit. That's probably why the president isn't here. This is your fault. And I might just say, okay, that's enough. Let's let her get going again. This isn't offensive at all. It's just a process that's really well. It's well on camera, so those of you that have pulled up later to learn, as well as those that are able to learn. That's nice and organized. Fair enough? Okay. I'm going to introduce Jenna real quick. I went and looked at her bio.
I saw you got that off my LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's really nice. This is what I'm hearing from Shelley and Janelle. They just love it. Very free with their time. Very, very good at what she does. She works for the USDA. Does anybody know what that is? Utah State. What? Yeah, culture. It's with it's the Utah Division of Agriculture and Food. Department.
There's so many divisions and departments and.
She is the diagnostic entomologist. Went to Clemson.
That's right.
Degree there, and is the state apiary inspector. And I'd like you to kind of explain that, especially for those of you that don't know how we can have access to her and her knowledge and her expertise free. And it's really a nice service by the state. So before you get going, I'll explain that.
Absolutely.
And then she does some research on it's really quite interesting.
Yeah.
This is something that Shelley put down. I put that there. In case we have some free time. And in that case, we'll have some open discussion and feedback on these subjects that she's curious about. But I think Jenna's going to really take a hunk of time. Get you out of here on time. Janelle, this is my savior. Hurry, run up here and save me. Come up here. Now that I'm conducting, you sit down right there. Okay, my friend.
All right.
It's all yours. Go for it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Gordon, for the fantastic introduction.
Yes.
Let me make sure my phone is on silent here so we don't get interrupted. Absolutely it is. So yeah, like Gordon said, my name is Jenna Crowder. I'm with the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, specifically with our apiary program. One of the really cool things about the Utah State Apiary Program is that it is actually older than the state itself. It was founded back when Utah was just a territory. So the whole purpose of it is to help beekeepers be able to recognize, identify, and mitigate some of these really nasty bee diseases that we're going to be talking about today. And there's oftentimes this misconception that apiary inspector, government official, are you the bee police? And absolutely not. We are not the bee police. In addition to myself, there's also Joey Caputo, who's our other state apiary inspector. He does a lot more work with also invasive species trapping that we do throughout the state. So his time is, he is spread a lot more thinly than I am. I'm able to really make myself available to all beekeepers throughout the state. And that's really the whole purpose of the program, to help support the beekeepers in Utah, to lift y'all up, to give y'all the tools that you need to enjoy successful beekeeping, which is so much more enjoyable than, I'm sure some of y'all have seen, years of unsuccessful beekeeping, when the mites get real bad, or maybe something comes up in the hive. It is just heartbreaking to watch a hive die. So my role is to help guide folks through pest and disease issues specifically. As Gordon alluded to, this is a free service for registered beekeepers. As a friendly reminder, beekeeper registration with the Department of Agriculture is a legal requirement to keep bees in Utah. Doesn't matter if you got 1 hive or 1,000 hives, I don't care. I just want to see folks named in my registration database so that I know where the beekeepers are, who y'all are, and the whole purpose of that is so that if there is a problem, say a disease or an aggression problem with some bees, I know who to contact and we can work with each other to resolve any given problem. One of the other perks of registration is that since you, the registration itself is a legal requirement, but you also have the option to tell the department where your apiaries are if you have multiple. And the cool thing about that is that you get disease outbreak alerts for American foulbrood if there ever is an American foulbrood outbreak within 2 miles of your registered apiary. In addition to that, if you're registered, free inspections from both myself, Joey, or a county inspector, we'll get to that later. Free laboratory testing. We offer state-of-the-art lab testing using PCR technology, so the same kind of DNA testing that a lot of these fancy COVID tests use, for example. And that is specifically testing for American foulbrood and European foulbrood. These are the 2 most impactful bee diseases that we see throughout the state. And all of that is free for registered beekeepers. Also, if you're a larger scale beekeeper, maybe you need a health certificate to cross state lines or to qualify for federal relief assistance programs, we offer those health certificates and inspection services free to those large scale commercial beekeepers as long as everyone is registered. Okay, so that's my little spiel. Yes, let's get my my PowerPoint pulled up here. I will need your help. So before we really dive into it, let me see a show of hands. I see some friendly faces. I see some folks I recognize, but I'm seeing a lot of new faces. Who here, this is your first time keeping bees? Congratulations, it is going to be a wild ride for y'all. There are so many ways a beehive can get sick and die, and this is why I will just tell everybody straight up right now, for those of you who already know this, it's not a surprise, I am not a beekeeper in my free time because I know exactly how much work it takes. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of love for your bees, which I've got the love, but I don't have too much of the free time. But it takes a lot of time and close attention and careful monitoring for some of these pest and disease issues that we're going to discuss today. And let's see. Here is so today, okay, we're going to do a modified pest and disease management presentation today. So like I said, it's going to kind of be information overload. There will be natural break points where I will ask if anybody has questions on a particular topic. But as we are going through this and I'm going through slide by slide, I will ask that you refrain from questions until we get to those natural break points.
All that whole, one to. Hang on.
What did I do?
Nothing. I didn't know you wanted to.
Oh, I can just use some little arrows.
That's working.
Or that.
That.
All right. Beautiful. Okay. Honeybee pest and disease management. Again, this is the focus of the whole aviary program. This is what we do. And our whole job is to be expert from pest and disease management. Okay, before I get into that, this is for everyone who's not a first-year beekeeper. Do y'all remember the Bee Informed Partnership's annual colony loss survey? They are no longer doing that. Instead, the Apiary Inspectors of America, which is a professional organization that I'm a part of, it's LinkedIn for apiary inspectors. They have partnered with Auburn University to come up with a replacement. Basically, there were some federal budget cuts that led to the Bee Informed Partnership effectively dissolving, and along with it, that nationwide colony loss survey. So to fill in that gap and to help get more information about overall bee health in the United States over time, there is that survey. And this is live until May 31st. So this is going to ask about your overwintering success. It's going to ask about if you made any splits, if you purchased any new colonies, what your numbers from last year to this year are, and any changes in your colony numbers. And all of this is helping contribute to a larger picture of overall honeybee health in the United States. So highly encourage y'all to fill that out. Again, that's going to be open and live nationwide until May 31st, and I'm going to throw this QR code up at the very end of my presentation too, so if you miss this, don't worry, there will be another chance. Okay, I've already gone over this a little bit, but who we are and what we do with the apiary inspection program. We are myself and Joey Caputo and a whole host of county inspectors. We offer free health inspections, free lab testing, and free apiary health certification for registered beekeepers. This is kind of what we're going to go over today. So we're going to start with inspections, what you should be inspecting for. This is more for these first-year beekeepers. What should you be looking for? How often should you inspect? And answering some of those questions. We're going to look specifically at some diseases, and I know there was a request to discuss kind of early season diseases, what we expect to see at this time of year, so we'll get into that. We're going to talk about parasites and pests. So other living animals, we're not talking about bacteria, we're talking about parasites and varroa mites and all sorts of those. And then we're going to talk about integrated pest management strategies. Then we're going to talk about threats on the horizon. So these are things that we want to really be on the lookout for as beekeepers, because oftentimes beekeepers are the first line of defense for some of these invasive insect species. And then test your knowledge. This is optional. I don't know if we're going to have time for this, but I do have kind of an interactive photo-based disease identification quiz at the end. We'll see where we are on time. At the very least, I'll be able to share that resource with you so you can test your knowledge on your own time. So let's get into it. So for starters, let me give you some more context about where beekeepers are spread throughout the state and where a lot of work is done in the state for apiary inspections. These are numbers from last year. So in 2023, obviously, this is where the human populations kind of gather, is around the Wasatch Front. So naturally, we see a lot of beekeepers also in those areas. But we also have beekeepers spread throughout the entire state. We're talking really large-scale beekeepers who have thousands of colonies, especially in the central Utah area. What you'll notice, interestingly, about Utah County in particular, is we have a wide array of different sized beekeepers. So I think Utah County, more so than any other county that I work in, has this really unique cross-section of folks who are running hundreds, thousands of colonies, keeping bees right next to people who have 1 or 2 colonies in their backyard. And it's for that reason that, unfortunately, we do actually see a lot of disease outbreaks in Utah County. Now, that in combination with, I'm sure, many other factors, but I think that does contribute to it, this cross-pollination, if you will, of different sized beekeepers, right? Because as these migratory operations are moving around the country, they're coming into contact with other large-scale migratory operations. That in combination with potential unsanitary beekeeping practices is how we see disease spread. The bees themselves can also spread disease by robbing resources from hives and taking disease back with them. So when disease hives end up in a certain place and then those hives get robbed out, we see that transmission of disease into the hobbyists who never took their hives to California, right? So that is why we end up doing a lot of inspection work in Utah County. And a lot of that is also because currently, Utah County doesn't have a designated county inspector, but we are working to change that. More on that later. So all this to say, context is that you are keeping bees in a very interesting place to keep bees. Here's some more context. I just took this from a summary of accomplishments report from a couple of years ago, so a little bit out of date. But in the 5 years from 2018 to 2022, in Utah County alone, we found 178 hives with American foul brood, 125 hives with European foul brood, 120 hives with chalk brood, and 190 hives with parasitic mite syndrome. Those of you who know your diseases already know what I'm talking about and know why those numbers are pretty high, or why we don't want to see those numbers pretty high. Those of you who don't recognize those disease names, you'll see pictures of them, and we'll get into that in just a little bit here. And here's some more context of, again, just the amount of work that we're doing in Utah County as the state apiary program. So again, foul brood across multiple years. Again, this is a little bit out of date from 2018 or 2017 to 2022, but still, there's a ton of bee inspection work that happens in Utah County. Inspections. So how often, as a beekeeper, should you inspect? Generally, you want to inspect about once a month. Sorry, I thought these things were in a different order. You should inspect about once a month, and that's going to be a little bit longer than one full brood cycle. If you inspect once a month, you're getting a good picture of what the status of your hive health is that brood cycle. How many frames should you check? Ideally, you should be checking every frame in your colony. You know, for honey frames, maybe you don't need to fully pull them out and look at them, but you want to take a peek and know, okay, how many honey frames do I have? Are they building up honey stores all right? And in terms of brood frame, you absolutely want to be looking at every brood frame in that hive. That is going to be the best look at what the hive health status is at that point in time. What should you be looking for? The main overall thing is brood pattern. What does that brood pattern look like? Do we have a nice, solid, healthy chunk of capped brood or a healthy chunk of open brood? Or is it spotty? Are there gaps in that brood pattern? Does it look like some of the larvae are maybe a little deformed? Is one cell looking a little weird to you? These are all warning signs of various diseases, and that's, if you're going to be looking at one thing, you should be looking at overall brood pattern. In addition, you also want to make sure that the hive is queen right. Is the queen present? And you can do that either by laying eyes on the queen directly, or I think it's oftentimes easier to just find freshly laid eggs and look for those, because I will drive myself crazy looking for a queen all day, and she's faster than you think. She's going to scoot to one frame as soon as you put that other frame down. But if you see freshly laid queen eggs, that means she was there in the past 3 days. There's also an idea that you want to minimize the amount of tearing into a colony that you're doing. Especially if you're new, you don't want to risk damaging or hurting your queen. So if you see freshly laid eggs, that's a good sign. That means your hive is likely queen. And this is a really important one. When should you check for mites? Every time you're doing an inspection, so that's about once a month, except for when it hits August, September, October. That's when we naturally see varroa mites disperse throughout the environment and invade hives, and so we have a natural increase in varroa mite populations around fall. So you want to pay extra close attention and be doing mite checks about once every 2 weeks during those fall months. Okay. Let's look at some diseases. I'm going to start with scary, bad stuff, and then we're going to go into stuff that is a little bit more common and stuff that you're realistically going to encounter and stuff that isn't as scary. So the big, scary, big, bad one is American foul brood. I want you to remember these symptoms. Black scale, ropey dead larva. So if you stick a toothpick in one of these cap cells here, swirl that toothpick around and pull it out slowly. You see a rope like that in that nasty yellow snot color? That's when you call me, and you either submit a sample, we verify that with the DNA testing, or you have myself or Joey or another inspector come out and we confirm that diagnosis. In addition, you will see spotty brood pattern. This is a result of larvae dying and the bees trying to remove their bodies from the hive. Sunken caps. So these caps, this isn't the best picture, but these caps, a healthy brood cap would be nice and convex. I always get concave and convex confused. It will be nice and convex. It would be like a nice, freshly baked loaf of bread, right? If you see that start to sink in on itself, there's a loss of internal pressure inside that cell because the larva in there is dead and it is slowly being decomposed or taken over by the American foul brood bacterium. In addition, American foul brood has a unique kind of foul odor to it. It's hard to describe in words. It smells like rot and death and chicken house and sulfur and just nasty. You know when you smell it. You will open up your hive and go, oh, yep, dirty diapers, all of it. It is nasty. Now the tricky bit is that a lot of these symptoms are pretty generalized, right? Spotty brood pattern, that can be indicative of a lot of different things. But it's like this trifecta of black scale right here. So this is basically the larva's dried up, dead husk of a body that's stuck to the bottom of the cell. For context, we are looking at a frame away from us right here. So it's like we're holding the frame by the top, or it's flipped upside down. So this is the bottom of the cell that we're looking at there. That black scale in combination with a spotty brood pattern and roping, that is the 3 red flags and why I hope you have my number on speed dial. Realistically, we don't see too much American foul brood throughout the state, and that is because we are also very aggressive about regulating American foul brood. Of all the diseases I talk about today, like I said, we're not the bee police, but if we do see and find American foul brood in your apiary, that's the one disease where, I do some follow-up calls. I knock on your door maybe a couple extra times just to make sure that we're all on the same page. For context, foul brood detections throughout the state, these are 2023 numbers. So we found, on this graph here, American foul brood is going to be this red circle. So last year we found American foul brood in Utah County and also in Wasatch and Summit County, in addition to Juab and Sanpete counties. All of these cases were resolved in that year. So the way that Utah law regulates American foul brood, you have to do something. We are not a mandatory burn state, and there are certain treatments, antibiotic treatments, that you can apply if you catch American foul brood early enough. However, the catch with applying antibiotics to American foul brood is that once those antibiotics are removed or circulated through the hive and they're no longer in the system, those symptoms can reoccur and pop right back up. So you will often get into a case where you are repeatedly treating year after year, and that can be a big money sink, especially for larger commercial operations and especially for hobbyists where it is just logistically very difficult to get antibiotics. So this is where we're seeing foul brood throughout the state. And just so you all know, again, this American foul brood is one that we treat very seriously. I do annual follow-ups for every apiary that I know that has American foul brood in the past year. I do an annual follow-up just to make sure that it doesn't pop up in the following year and that we are not missing any cases. Like I said, we also send out those outbreak notification letters, and last year we sent out 85 of those in response to these outbreaks. Prevention is going to be the key here for American foul brood. If you are new at getting into beekeeping, ask your bee provider, do they have a health certificate? If they do, that means that either myself or Joey Caputo we have physically and personally been to that apiary and confirmed that there is no American foul brood. So that is one thing you can ask for from your bee supplier, whether you're buying nukes, buying a package, ask if they can provide you a health certificate, especially if you're buying nukes. Because if you think about it, those nukes, you're buying frames, and those frames may carry disease in them more readily than a package of bees. In addition, beekeeper registration, making sure that you're getting those outbreak alerts, making sure that your registration information is up to date with your current mailing address and your current contact info. So if you move, change of address, make sure you get that updated, or else I'm just sending outbreak alerts into the void, right? And then lastly, be very wary of used equipment. American foul brood in particular is a very long-lived bacterial spore. So it can actually stay infectious in used equipment for up to, I've seen one source say 70 years. Most sources say about 40 years, which is still 40. That's a long time for these spores to be sitting and still be able to reinfect a colony. So if you're seeing a really good deal on beehive equipment and you don't know why this beekeeper is going out of business, buyer beware. Be very wary of that. And in fact, you are more than welcome to, if you ever come across used equipment, you are more than welcome to send in a sample for testing to get some confidence that you are doing clean work. Okay, more prevention. Because this disease is spread, it's spread in two main ways. One is by beekeeper interventions. So that means swapping diseased frames between hives, for example, or using contaminated tools. That's how a lot of these spores can get spread. So don't exchange equipment with your beekeeping buddy unless you have looked at that hive and you know for sure that it is not diseased, right? In addition, if you are storing unused equipment for an extended period of time, you want to make sure that it is stored indoors or in a bee-proof location. That can be under a tarp, that can be in a plastic sterile container or something, but we want to reduce the risk that robbing can occur. This is the second way that American foul brood spreads. It is as the hive weakens or as the hive is abandoned and there is potentially American foul brood spore-laden honey in that hive. Other bees are going to be attracted to it and they're going to rob out those resources and they're going to carry that bacteria back with them to their home hive and potentially infect your hive with American foul brood. So we want to reduce the risk of contamination via beekeeper intervention, and we want to reduce the risk of robbing spreading disease. Lastly, look how beautiful and shiny this hive tool is. Who has a hive tool that looks like that?
Nobody.
And that's because this is your first year, right? We'll see how long it stays like that. I have a hive tool that looks like that, and I can tell you why. It is because I overnight bleach soak my hive tools every single time I use them. 10% bleach, leave it in there overnight. It helps harden up some of that wax and propolis, make it a little bit less sticky, and then it's a lot easier to scrub off with a Brillo pad. So keeping that hive tool clean, especially if you're moving between apiaries and between colonies with the same tool, that's going to go a long way to reducing spread disease as well. So these are the consequences of what happens if you do let American foulbrood go unchecked. There are two ways to deal with it. The most effective way is destruction of the equipment. Again, keeping in mind that this is a very long-lived spore that can be re-infectious once you introduce bees back into the equation. And it can also stick around in the honey as well. So, the safest thing to do, burn it all. And that'll get you there. But like I said, Utah is not a mandatory burn state. If it's caught early enough and under the right circumstances, American foulbrood is eligible for antibiotic treatment, and there are actually 3 different antibiotics that are approved for treatment of American foulbrood: terramycin, lincomycin, and tylosin. You would have to go through a veterinarian to get those antibiotics, and like I said, once you remove antibiotics from the situation, that disease is going to pop right back up, symptoms are going to come back, so you're having to continuously reapply antibiotics. So it is an option. I wouldn't say it's a good one though. Okay, I was also asked to talk a little bit about the American foulbrood vaccine. Who has heard of this? Most folks, yes, we got some folks. So this is a brand new technology that was, I actually made sure that the veterinary division of the Department of Ag approved it for use in Utah last year, so it is approved for use in Utah. I don't know that anybody is anybody actually using queens that are
The inoculated
that's
queens?
what I keep hearing. It's too expensive. Yeah. But the idea is that this is a vaccine that you feed to the colony. It's meant for use specifically with queen breeding operations. So this vaccine is fed to the workers in those queen breeding operations, and then the workers then feed the queens to be vaccinated royal jelly. The queens then become vaccinated, and then this is where the technology goes way over my head. It's called transgenerational immune priming. So the queen is now vaccinated, and she can pass down AFB immunity to her offspring. How that exactly works, I couldn't tell you, but I do know that looking at some of the safety and efficacy studies, it's pretty good. It's pretty cool. The drawbacks of the vaccine are that, one, it's new and it's very expensive from what I hear. I actually don't know anybody who is using vaccinated queens, but I've seen them for sale. They go for, online I've seen them for like $70 per queen, which is, to each their own. If you can afford it, why not? In terms of efficacy, this is my hesitation about the vaccine. Yes, it is approved for use in Utah, and yes, it's a fantastic tool to add to our arsenal against AFB. However, let me explain this graph to you because it looks like it didn't. It's not the highest resolution. What we're looking at here is on the left, we have 2 groups. This is the control group on the left over here. And on the right is a colony that was fed American foulbrood spores. And what these researchers did is they basically measured how many larvae become symptomatic if we feed a colony American foulbrood spores. So the controls were not fed any American foulbrood spores. The AFB challenge was fed American foulbrood spores. On the left, this white bar here is the vaccinated group. So these workers, this queen received the vaccine, so her workers have been primed with that immunity. On the gray side, we have placebo. So they were fed sugar water, but not a vaccinated sugar water. The queen does not have that immunity, and she did not pass it down to her offspring. What we see in this study is that workers with worker larvae with AFB immunity did have more success. So we see larval survival is, I'm sorry, is this larval survival? I really wish this was higher resolution. In short, what this graph is showing us is that yes, there is a slight difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated larval survival, but notably, it's a difference of about 30%. So 30% of the larvae that these vaccinated queens made showed resistance to American foulbrood. That still leaves 70% of the larvae that did not. If we're thinking about the colony as a single organism, 30% of larvae being resistant isn't going to cut it. So again, it's a tool in the arsenal, but I would not trust this vaccine to completely eradicate AFB from the equation. What else do we got here? Okay, this is, I just wanted to also point out that the AFB vaccine is safe. It might not be the most maximally effective thing out there, but it is safe. This was a study that looked at a whole bunch of variables. So they looked at the weight of vaccinated and unvaccinated colonies. They looked at the viral loads. They looked at the overall worker survival. They looked at the percentage of brood frame, and they were not able to find any significant differences in any of these variables that they measured. So we know that at the very least, there's no negative effects that this vaccine has on the health of the colony. So if it's safe and it's moderately effective, I say, maybe not 2 thumbs up because I wish it was more effective, but 1 thumb up. It's a tool in the arsenal. Let's add it to the equation, but we can't trust it to completely eradicate AFB from our environment. Okay, so that's the really big bad. And again, with American foulbrood, we see that in about 2 to 3% of colonies that we inspect. European foulbrood is one that we do actually see pretty commonly this time of year, especially in spring as colonies are growing. And maybe there's a little bit of weather stress, for example. We can see this array of symptoms. So once again, generalized symptoms. First thing we're seeing that's telling us something is wrong, spotty brood pattern. Next, we see that some of these larvae here are deformed, they are curly, they are off color. So they're not nice pearly white, they are this off yellow color. They do form a scale, kind of similar to American foulbrood, but it's easy to remove. It's a little rubbery. And you can sometimes have a little bit of a row. See what I mean? Where it's frustrating how similar some of these diseases present. Here we can see more of that. See this we can actually see the tracheal system in this one here. So these lines here are the respiratory system of that larval honeybee. And that is a clear sign of European foulbrood. Here we have kind of that rubbery scale, which can actually look very similar to the American foulbrood, the extruded pupil tongue, which can make things a little bit confusing. But the combination of that physical trachea and the younger larva being infected, this is our dead giveaway that this is a European foulbrood. Now, European foulbrood is actually super treatable. It's, in many cases, it will actually resolve on its own with a strong nectar flow, so supplemental feeding can help strengthen up the colony. In addition, breaking the brood cycle by requeening, not only are you basically starving the bacteria of its host, which is the larva, by doing that, you're also introducing more hygienic stock by introducing a hygienic queen, which can help the bees lower the pathogen load by removing infected larvae, and overall the colony can grow that way. In addition, European foulbrood responds very well to antibiotic treatment, and from what we know, there is no known antibiotic resistance in the European foulbrood that we see. The tricky bit is actually getting your hands on antibiotics. So this is one of those fun, cool announcements that I mentioned. If you ever are in a situation where your hive has severe European foulbrood and you need antibiotics, there's a couple things you can do. We do have a list of bee-friendly veterinarians that is on the Apiary Program website. You will notice, though, that not so much a problem for Utah County, but there are notably no vets that operate in Salt Lake City. There are very few vets that operate in Utah County on this list. Let me tell y'all, trying to get vets to sign up on Honeybee Health has been pulling teeth. And I get where they're coming from. These are people who are used to working with dogs and cats and horses, right? And then to have someone come in and say, I need antibiotics for my bees, there is a concern, a lot of these vets are concerned that if they prescribe antibiotics without having full understanding of the organism, they could potentially lose their veterinary license. So I get where they're coming from, right? But unfortunately, that does leave a big hole in the system where folks can't get antibiotics for their bees when they need them. And this is where I'm really excited to announce there's a new state vet, and he has agreed to work with me on what we are calling the EFB pilot program. So, what I want to demonstrate to this state vet, his name is Daniel Christensen, and he's been a pleasure to work with. What I want to demonstrate to him is that there is a demand for an exemption to a particular law on the books that requires vets having in-person contact with their clients before they can prescribe treatment for the patient. It's called the vet-client-patient relationship. It gets convoluted, but basically I need to demonstrate this to this vet that this is a problem and there's a need for some solution. So, this is where I'm kind of asking for your help. If you have European foul brood in your hives and you are unable to get antibiotics through one of the vets we have on this list, give me a call and we can establish that vet-client-patient relationship with the state veterinarian, and then he will be able to get you the paperwork you need to get antibiotics. So I know it's a couple more hoops to jump through, it's a little bit working with the government a little bit, but I'm really excited for this program this year, and I really want this to succeed. Not that I want European foul brood in everyone's hives, but yeah, if you need antibiotics and you can't get them, let me know. I'll be able to help you out. Okay, so that's all bacterial diseases. Does anybody have questions about bacterial diseases before I move on to other stuff? Okay. Oh, yes?
So, whatever happened to the product that BYU developed for American poultry?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep. So, for context, this was a phage, which is, I think it's a virus, right? It's a kind of virus.
You repeat the question.
Oh yeah, thank you. The question was, whatever happened to that that American foul brood treatment that BYU developed a couple years ago? It does work, but it is not available, is the problem. It does work, but good luck getting your hands on it. My understanding is that the company that invented it basically ran out of money, and they were not able to get it through the FDA approval process, so it was never formally approved, and then I think they were looking for a buyer to buy them out and basically buy the patent. I don't know that that went anywhere, but yeah, I hear you. Okay, anything else? All right. Okay. Staph brood is something that I do generally see around this time of year. This is a viral disorder. Sometimes I will see myself, I find myself confusing it with European foul brood sometimes because it's very similar symptoms of an uncurled larva, discolored, but uniquely, this staph brood will present in that the larva, it's not melting against the bottom of the cell, it's not making any of those funny scales, but it instead elongates and stretches, and this is actually the little head of the bee that just never fully formed. So you get these tiny little heads, all right next to each other. Staph brood, like I said, is viral. It's spread by both Varroa mites, and it can actually be spread by nurse bees as they're feeding the larva. Treatment's pretty simple, requeening, that's it. You're starting the pathogen of its host, and you are introducing new hygienic stock. Chalk brood is a fungal disorder that we often see associated with overly wet conditions. So if there's too much humidity or moisture built up in the hive, you can see fungal chalk brood outbreaks. Sometimes you'll see these piles of chalk brood mummies on the right outside your hive entrance. I'm gonna pass around a little vial of these so the newbies can see what they're looking for. Like I said, this is a fungus, so it thrives in wet conditions. Increasing ventilation throughout the hive is a really great way to help reduce the pathogen load of chalk brood. So that can be a screen bottom board, maybe some popsicle sticks underneath the lid to give you a little ventilation outhole. And I've also heard folks have good success with just tipping the front of their hive ever so slightly forward so that water can run off the front and run out the entrance instead of pooling in the hive. If all else fails though, again, same thing as staph brood, requeening, introducing new hygienic stock, and starving the pathogen of its host. That's going to be the keys to success here. Nosema is another fungal disorder that we actually see very commonly coming out of winter. So we had a huge nosema problem last year, so coming the spring of 2023, especially in some of these migratory operations, we were seeing a lot of nosema. My best guess is what happened in winter 2022-2023 is it was really wet in the pollination season in California. Those almond orchards, it was raining, it was abnormally wet. So a lot of these bees get cooped up in the hive and they can't go outside on what we call cleansing flights, or basically just go to the bathroom. So they go to the bathroom inside the hive, then you get this buildup of fecal matter that has nosema spores in it. The bees are trying to clean it out, so they're ingesting the spores, and then it just spirals into this gross kind of dysentery in front of the hive. In terms of symptoms, the main one is going to be seeing these gross fecal spots on the outside of the hive, and then to confirm that diagnosis, because dysentery can be caused by a number of things, including potentially pesticide poisoning, or maybe they just ate some bad sugar water. So if you suspect nosema, you can send in a sample of dead bees for analysis, where I look at them under the microscope. This is what those little nosema spores look like, and then I can quantify their nosema load, and you'll be able to know if there is nosema in your bee population or not. Luckily, nosema is actually one of the few things that has a treatment. You do not need to go through a vet for it. It is called Fumidil B. You can order it online. Man Lake, Amazon, Dadant. It comes in a powder form, and you mix it in with sugar, powdered sugar, and then you sprinkle it on top of the frames of your hive, and it'll clear nosema right up. It's great. Okay. Any questions about diseases before I dive into parasites and pests?
Jenna, real quick, just one. With nosema, some of the stuff that's been found for the new beekeepers, if you have containers and stuff that's collecting water, nosema is still present and stuff coming around, you want to make sure you clean everything off and make sure that the presence of the nosema or even the fecal matter from the bees is disappeared from food or water sources.
Absolutely, that's a really good point. So Chris just pointed out, if you do have a nosema problem, keeping the water sources clean is a really great way to reduce nosema load. And also on top of that, if you're getting a ton of this fecal buildup on the bottom board, on the entrance reducer, on the front of your hive, just wiping it off with a bleach soap rag, that'll do good.
Can you, just with nosema, if it's not really bad, just let it kind of, as they get a diet, doesn't it kind of work itself out?
It does. It can, yeah. In not severe cases, oftentimes. Yes. So the question was, will nosema work itself out of the system, or will nosema infections resolve on their own? And in some cases, yes, they absolutely can. Yes, in severe cases, you may want to apply an antibiotic, like that Fumidil, but it's really just going to depend on what your adult worker population is looking like, and how much nosema spores, what that nosema load is. There's a certain economic threshold. It's 1 million spores per bee. So fewer than that, and it'll resolve on its own. More than 1 million spores per bee, that's when it's in your best interest to apply an antibiotic. Yep. Something else I should mention about this Fumidil B treatment, this is good to know. There is a nosema researcher that Joey and I spoke with fairly recently who suggested to us that a fall-time application of Fumidil into your hives will reduce the risk of nosema the following spring. So it's not a guarantee, but it can be kind of like an insurance policy against nosema. So that could be something worth incorporating into your treatment rotation if you are having nosema problems. Okay. Any more questions about diseases, little microbes, before we go on to the macro stuff? Yes?
The mention of water sources is something I hadn't thought about for a while. Could you just briefly say how close does it need to be?
Oh, that's a good question. So the question was, how close does a water source need to be to the colony, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I actually don't have a great answer for that. I've heard conflicting things. Some folks say, just put it right there and it's fine. Some folks swear that bees really like to work a little bit and fly for their water. So, really, I would suggest kind of, why not both? give them a water source right nearby, give them a water source that's maybe on the other side of the yard. You can make these water sources really easily by using a shallow pan or a tray and filling it with water, and then adding some larger rocks in there so the bees have something to hold on to. That can help. Does anybody have a good answer for that, actually? 'Cause-
I think that's the best answer.
all right.
That's what I do. I have it all over. And my cat, I keep a cat outside, and I decided if you fill it all the way up, the bees drown. If you fill it halfway, the bees can climb out the side of your cat, so your dog water.
There you go. Yep. Okay. I'm gonna move on to probably the most important issue that, especially new beekeepers, if you're not paying attention up to this point, that's fine. Pay attention now. This is the stuff that you are actually going to have to be getting right for Varroa mites. We hate these guys. They are tiny little parasites that are actually native to Asia. They were introduced to the United States in the 1980s. I'm gonna pass this around if you like. And so they are a relatively recent introduction to the world of beekeeping. If you ever get a chance to ask an old-timer beekeeper about beekeeping before Varroa, has anyone here kept bees before Varroa? Yeah. Yeah, it is just heartbreaking. So we hate Varroa mites. They are nasty creatures, and they have, let's go a little bit into their biology. So they have a couple of different phases. We're gonna call this the phoretic phase. So they will hang out on adult worker bees, and then this female will jump off and go into an open cell right before it's capped off. Then the cell gets capped off, and she will lay an egg, and that egg is going to hatch into a male and a female. They will develop and mate, and they were going to feed and feed and feed on that larva. Notice how there's more mites here than there were at the start of this cycle. So they're feeding, and from one mite, now we've got 3 that have emerged. They emerge out along with the adult worker, and then they hang out on that adult worker for a little bit, and then after that phoretic phase is over, they jump off and then they go into another cell, and the cycle repeats itself. So what that means is that you can end up with this exponential growth of mite populations where from one mite, after generation 1, now you have 4 mites. One generation after that, now you've got 16 mites. Another one after that, and I can't do that mental math, but the number goes up rather quickly if you are not on top of the Varroa mite control. Again, just to really hammer that home that the phoretic mites they're making multiple progenies here, and so we get this exponential growth of mite populations inside the colony if left unchecked. And compared to the body size of the bee, these things are massive, right? If we were to scale up a honeybee to human size, Varroa mites would be probably about the size of this laptop on me. So they're massive. And then the point of that being that not only are they feeding on the larva while they're inside the cell during that reproductive stage, they are also feeding on the adult bee and literally leaving open wounds all over this bee. This is weakening the immune system of the bee, and this is why we see virus problems get exacerbated when Varroa are a problem in a colony. So, like I mentioned, Varroa mites, I think I mentioned this for sacbrood. Sacbrood is one of these viruses that Varroa mites can spread, and there are a bunch of other viruses. The most common one is called deformed wing virus, and this is one that, it does what it says on the tin. I've got some deformed wing virus bees here that I'm going to pass around if anyone wants to take a look. But this virus will infect the bee and then basically prevent the wings from fully developing, so that a worker that has deformed wing virus, she's not going to be a functional forager, she's not going to be able to contribute much to the health of the colony, and she will be a drain on resources. And potentially she will even pass along that deformed wing virus to any larva that she's taking care of. These viruses, again, they can be spread by Varroa mites, but they can also be spread bee to bee or queen to offspring. That transgenerational immune priming comes back to bite us a little bit, right? Not just deformed wing virus, but like I mentioned, sacbrood. There's also black queen cell virus. There's chronic bee paralysis virus. All of these are vectored by Varroa mites. Interestingly though, and we see this reflected in some survey data, this is from the National Honeybee Survey. This is a survey that myself and Joey did. We collect samples from 24 apiaries throughout the state. We send those off for molecular analysis for viruses and various things that we don't test for in the department. But what we saw from the 2022 results, and I hated to see this, 100% of the samples we sent in all had deformed wing virus. I didn't observe symptoms in 100% of colonies that I sampled, but we still see the virus in 100% of colonies that were sampled. This goes to show that these viruses, they're already present in the beekeeping ecosystem. They're probably already present in your hive. And the weakening of the bee's immune system by varroa mites is really going to allow those viruses to set in and cause problems. So the best thing you can do to prevent the onset of viral problems, because remember, viruses, unlike bacteria, unlike fungal stuff, they're very difficult to treat. Sure, you can bring clean and that might help, but there's nothing you can apply, there's nothing you can really do to mitigate it. The best thing you can do is prevent the onset of those viruses by keeping varroa levels low, keeping your honeybee's immune system strong, again, by controlling varroa. In addition to passing along viruses, varroa mites will also cause what we call parasitic mite syndrome, and this is basically when a varroa problem is left unchecked. So again, generalized symptoms, spotty brood hive. Something is wrong here. We also see, frustratingly, very similar to European pulpwood, discolored larvae, shoot down pupa. Often with parasitic mite syndrome, you will see deformed wing virus in a lot of these bees. If you were to do a rope test, though, there would be no roping. But see how even this one we've got, you can see the mite in that cell. This one we have a melted down larva right here. And then this is another key giveaway for parasitic mite syndrome. Oftentimes these bees will uncap a dead pupa and then eat the head to try to recover a little bit of protein. And so if you see these kind of dead-headed pupa or these T-headed pupa, that can be a sign that you have a mite problem. Again, just really hammering home that especially in fall, you really need to be on top of varroa mite checks. So, this is an average from 2023 from both Joey and myself, all of the inspections that we did throughout the year. On average, we see pretty low mite levels, May, June, July, and then August, September, October, those mite levels are skyrocketing up. The general consensus from the scientific community is that 3% mite load, or 9 mites in a mite check, is when it's time to treat. I personally think 2% is a more appropriate time to treat. Again, thinking about those viruses and thinking that we really want to get on top of things. Exactly. So, varroa mite checks. I know I've mentioned this a lot, checking for varroa mites. There's a couple different ways to do it. You can use a sticky board, so putting a little piece of plastic sheeting under the bottom of a screen bottom board hive with a little bit of oil to keep mites on it, and then checking that daily and checking your daily mite drop. There is a way to calculate mite load by doing that. Or you can do drone sampling where you are targeting drone brood, so those larger kind of bubble wrap looking cells. If you sample the drones, mites generally have higher reproductive success when they are reproducing in drone brood, because drones have a slightly longer development time, which gives the mites more development time. So if you're seeing mites in drones, then you've got mites in colony, and that's one way to do it. The problem with this method is that it's very difficult to quantify mite load, because there's also some bias in here. So instead, in my opinion, the best method for doing a mite check is doing an active powdered sugar roll or alcohol wash. And this is the fact sheet that we have on the website that breaks down step by step how to do a mite check. For some of y'all newbies out there, I'm also more than happy to come out and work with you one-on-one to demonstrate how to do a mite check, because it is so important that you know how to do this properly. The basic gist is that you're sampling a half cup of bees, which is about 300 workers, and you are using either powdered sugar or isopropyl alcohol to dislodge the mites from the bees. shake the mites out, and then count the number of mites. And then that's a really easy way to quantify what your mite load is at that given time. So doing that active mite check about once a month is going to ensure that you know what your varroa mite population is at any given time, and you know when it's time to apply a treatment. Okay, I'm not going to talk too much about treatments because there's a bunch of different ones, and we get really lost in the weeds on which treatment is appropriate for when. I was asked to give some guidance on early season treatments though, so I'm gonna blast through these real quick, and then I'm gonna give you a couple of good early season treatment recommendations. Just a couple of different products, just to have on your radar. Again, just going through these real quick, just to highlight, there are a bunch of different treatment options. They all have different ingredients, they all have different benefits and drawbacks, and they all have different quirks about them. Checkmate, what was that other one? Upastan. Both of those have fallen out of favor because there's some resistance. Amitraz, this is a really good early season option before you have honey supers on, because you cannot use this with honey supers. If you do, that's bee honey now. That's not human honey, that's bee honey, because this chemical is this is a synthetic insecticide. It is not kidding around, and it will get into the honey. Thymol is another really good early season one. I love this one because I think it's super easy to apply. It comes in a little tin like this, a little tin of cat food. Don't give it to your cats. You want to peel this open, and then it's got this nice like thymol, the essential oil smell to it. You put that on the topmost fruit box, and then you let the bees have at it. The idea is that it agitates the bees into breaking up the thymol crystals themselves and then distributing them throughout the hive, so that multiple all the frames, all of the brood is being exposed to these thymol crystals as the bees are working to break it down and carry it out. Same deal with this one. Don't use it with honey supers on because it will get into the honey. This is just another formulation of thymol, so more of the same. Mitaway, Formic Pro, these utilize formic acid. These are also super simple to apply. They come in a little paper wrapped patty like this. These are just demonstrations, by the way. There's no active ingredient. Because I'm holding it with my bare hands, right? Right? And there's no smell. These, again, super simple to apply. You put it on the top of your brood frames, or put it on the top of your brood frames, one in each corner. Leave that in for, there's a couple different ways to do it. You can either do it for a week or 2 weeks. It just depends on what your mite levels are looking like and what the weather is going to do. The tricky thing about Formic Pro is that it has temperature restrictions. So if it's above 85 degrees Fahrenheit, so actually I learned something yesterday. I thought that it would over-fumigate the colony, but I was all wrong. Turns out the problem is that if it's 85 or above, the bees are all busy fanning outside of the hive. They're bearding and clustering, and so they're not actually being exposed to the Formic Pro at all. So they're getting underdosed. Whereas if you apply it when it's too cold, they're not ventilating enough, and so you get this overdose effect. So this formic acid is one that is great for now, this time of year when it's nice and cool, but you really got to pay close attention to the weather. Popguard, I absolutely love because you don't need to brew honey supers, you don't need to worry about temperature restrictions or anything like that. The one drawback is that it's really not the most effective, and you're probably going to need to do multiple treatments in succession. See, all of these have little quirks about them. And then one of the more recent additions to our mite treatment arsenal is oxalic acid. There's a couple different ways to apply it. You can do it in a dribble. So oxalic acid, it comes in a powder form. It comes in like a big bag, and then you mix it up with sugar water. And then you can apply it using a syringe or a turkey baster. Or alternatively, you can use what's called the PowerPoint crash method, where that's the best one, right? It's all the mice go away. Where were we?
You didn't mention Formic Pro to be used with honey supers on.
Off the top of my head, I'm actually not certain.
I think it's not.
I believe you can. Formic Pro, yeah. It will be specified on the label though.
Okay.
So if you do need to remove honey supers, it will have a very clear warning, remove honey supers. No, I think you can. Yeah. Oh, wait, no. Do not use queen colonies or super for honey. So there you go. No, do not use with honey supers. Pop guard you can use with honey supers though. I know that for certain. That's why I like it. Okay. Grow treatments. Thymol. Where we were at oxalic acid. So you can also apply oxalic acid as a vapor, and this is really great for really early season before brood production or after brood production is done, or really you can kind of do this in the dead of winter if you get a nice birthday. But you use one of these little wand things that hooks up to a car battery using these alligator clamps here, and this wand will get really, really hot, and you put your powdered oxalic acid in the little receptacle here, and with a screen bottom board or an open bottom hive, you put it underneath the hive and let it vaporize throughout the entire hive. Now, notice the respirator. Also, the glove, it's not on here, but gloves and eye protection, because this stuff is not fun to accidentally vaporize yourself with. Please read the safety labels of these products, because all of these are chemicals that are meant to kill stuff, right? They're all meant to kill mites. So you really want to be protecting yourself as well. I see a couple hands. Let me get one slide further and then we'll pause for varroa treatment questions. One of the best tools that you can have in your arsenal is this online varroa treatment decision tool. This will take into account, it's kind of like a flow chart quiz kind of thing where it asks you, what's the growth phase of the hive? Do you want organic options only, or are you okay with synthetic? Do you have honey supers on right now? And then it takes all of these factors into account, and then it gives you a list of recommended options that work for your operation. So this helps narrow down some of the options and makes it a little bit more digestible when you're picking between all these different honey treatments. I saw 2 hands up. This is a good pause point for questions.
Back up for a second.
Yes.
Just real quick. Our hour is up. I'm not a hipper on this stuff, so we just gotta talk for a second. You can tell she is informed.
And I will keep talking if you don't stop me.
I think what I would recommend is just let her keep going. Do not feel like you're judged if you have to go. That's not a problem. Is that fair? And then you're warned, we're an hour into it.
Thank
How
you.
long do you think you have left?
Probably about 10
Is
minutes
that
or so.
okay?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
We need that website again.
yes. There you go. Yep, varroa treatment decision tool. Varroa management decision tool. This is a really great
So would that tell you the difference between just oxalic acid and oxalic acid with a vaporizer? Because that's
I
my
don't
question
think
is,
so.
like vaporizer, is there a difference in the effect on honey versus just using oxalic acid pads or other things?
No, there's no difference. So oxalic acid
So
is
as long
one
as
that
you're
you
using
can use with
oxalic
honey.
acid, you need to, whatever the recommendation is on the effect on the overall hive,
Mhm.
you follow it, whether it's the pads or the vaporizer.
Yeah, the pads are gonna be tricky because the pads are not technically an approved method of oxalic acid application. The EPA has recently come out with a statement that says basically that oxalic acid pads are not approved because there is some risk that there are flame retardants in the material of the pad itself. So there hasn't been any safety testing done on that. So I would really advise against doing the oxalic acid pads, just because we don't have the safety data there for it. In terms of the dribble versus the vapor though, I can tell you that both dribble and vapor are safe to use with honey supers.
They're both safe with ice.
Yes,
Okay, perfect.
yes.
So one question, one comment, I apologize if I'm confusing her. On the Form Pro website, it does say as of January 12th, 2023, in North America and New Zealand, you cannot use the honey super farm. So,
They can?
yeah.
Ooh, that's good, okay. Formic Pro. As of January of last year. Okay, that is news to me, that's awesome, that's good to
Formic
hear.
acid is an acid naturally occurs in honey. Controls vapor and formic acid by the end of the treatment. You can treat honey you can't treat with honey supers on North America and New Zealand sperm. That's the.
Only in North America and New Zealand, so don't be taking these hives to Canada.
My question is, on those pads, and those are not approved, is there any research that says whether they work or not? Other than anecdotal?
There is evidence that extended release oxalic acid products are effective. In fact, there is a new product that's called Viroxan that is in the approval pipeline as we speak. That is an extended release oxalic acid product. And in the last I checked in, Viroxan is expected to be approved for use in Utah by July of this year. And that product is very safe and effective.
What's it called again, I'm sorry?
Viroxan.
Roxanne?
Expensive? I don't know yet. I don't know what they're gonna jack up the price or what. Don't know where I saw your hand first.
With that heating element, don't leave it in very long.
Mm-hmm.
You can burn your hive down or
Mm-hmm.
start a fire.
Yeah. Maybe steer clear of the heating element until you messed around with the dribble a little bit, and then you can mess around with the heating element. And then I saw a question in the back, and then I'll
Yeah, are these preventive treatments or are these treatments that you apply when you have Varroa?
These are treatments that you apply when you have Varroa. These are not preventive. There are some preventive things you can do, such as drone brood removal. So you can get these bright green frames that have cells on them that are meant to encourage drone production. Remember I said that the Varroa mites have better success in drone brood than standard worker brood. If you put one of these green frames in and then remove it religiously every 2 weeks, you've got to remove it or else you're just making a mite bomb in your own hive. But if you remove that drone brood frame, freeze it, and then feed the drone brood to your chickens or something, you can kind of preventatively control Varroa that way. But you should always be doing mite checks, even if you are doing preventative methods like that, just so that you know that they're working.
So that green will work,
Mhm.
the queen will actually lay the drones on that?
Yes.
Oh my,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's got like slightly larger cells etched on it so that it encourages the workers to make drone brood. I saw a question in the back and then we'll go back to the front.
Are these mite treatments safe when you're doing a split in the spring? I'm worried about, my neighbor's hive had deformed wings. We did the split, but I knew we needed a mite treatment, so we did it, and it seems like everything's okay. But I just wonder, I've been hesitant to treat my own hives until I'm done, until they're done really. So do you know?
You know, it's gonna depend on which treatment you're using and the mechanism of action. So, yeah, come talk to me after and
Okay.
we'll get some more details about
Okay,
that.
thanks.
I saw a question up front,
How often are we doing a mite check?
about once a month. Once a month?
Inspection?
Yeah, whenever you're doing your inspection. And then in fall, up that to once every 2 weeks. Yep. And then I saw another hand go up kind of in the middle zone here.
I'm new to bees.
Yes,
Why don't the bees just attack these mites? I mean,
a lot of them do.
if I had something that was a lactose-sized creature attack, I would do everything to kill it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of bees do, and I mean a lot of bees as in a lot of gene-line bees do have what we call hygienic behavior or Varroa-sensitive hygiene. The issue though is that the European honeybee did not co-evolve with this parasite in the way that its original host, the Asian honeybee, did. So the Asian honeybee has much more Varroa-sensitive hygiene just naturally. They have different temperature thresholds and various other things that make Varroa and the Asiatic honeybee able to coexist. But the European honeybee doesn't have any of those adaptations. There are queen breeders and researchers that are actively working to make more gene lines of European honeybees that are Varroa sensitive hygiene and very, very responsive to Varroa. But the tricky thing is, these researchers can do one thing, but we also have natural swarms in the environment and commercial beekeeping industry. There's just so many other sources of genetics to come from that even if you buy a Varroa sensitive hygiene queen, that's a guarantee for maybe, as long as you have that queen. As soon as they make a new queen or you need to requeen again, you're going to lose those genetics. So to answer your question, yes, they do respond to Varroa, but it's just not part of their natural biology. So we're going to have to breed it into them. Okay, I'm going to keep on moving here. So a couple announcements. I'm gonna skip past a lot of this stuff because I wanna be respectful of y'all's time as well. So I'm gonna zoom past some of the stuff that you really don't need to worry about. Tracheal mites, you don't need to worry about these. I have done a lot of tracheal mite dissections looking for them, never found them in Utah. The symptoms of it, sometimes you'll see this K-wing, see where the hind wing is a little bit in front of the forewing, like the wings are swapped in the opposite direction that they should be. That's the only reliable symptom of tracheal mite, but even that is kind of difficult to see. The other two bees don't have it, it's just the one. And again, tracheal mites, I've never seen them here. You don't really need to worry about them. Wax moth is more of a problem for stored equipment. You end up with these these silk tunnels through the wax. This is the adult form of the wax moth, and they can make these just a real mess of wax and equipment. There are preventatives like Paramoth that can repel wax moths, and Surtan is another treatment you can purchase to apply to equipment that you're going to put in storage, and it will repel wax moths as well. If you do have equipment that has been infested with wax moths and you want to reuse it, like if it's your own equipment from last year, and you know it's clean otherwise, either freezing the frames overnight or bagging them and leaving them in the hot sun for a day. So heat treatment, cold treatment. That'll kill those wax moth larvae. Small hive beetles, we don't have it here. Yay! Okay. Like I said, integrated pest management, I'm going to really zoom through this because I want to get to my cool announcements. This is the IPM triangle where the bottommost rung here is the most impactful thing that you can do, and then as we get narrower and narrower, we're going to get into diminishing returns, but it's all still good stuff to do. Prevention is the most impactful thing you can do to control American foul brood. Getting that health certificate, being aware of used equipment, and cultural controls such as keeping your tools clean, preventing robbing behavior, storing beehive equipment in a safe and bee-proof area. Doing regular inspections, paying close attention to that brood pattern. And in terms of action thresholds, for American foul brood, any infection level is unacceptable. So you either need to apply treatment very promptly and then commit to applying that treatment for the rest of that hive's life, or destroy the equipment and just be done with it. Like I said, those are the two options for control, and then record keeping and keeping track of what was the status of the hive last you looked at it. That'll go a long way to being on top of things too. Varroa mite IPM prevention, ask if you're buying a package or a nuke, ask if the bees have been treated before you buy them. A lot of times package producers are pre-treating with oxalic acid vapor, so that's a good thing. It means you're getting mite-free bees, and it doesn't hurt to ask, okay? Cultural controls like drone trapping, that preventative thing like we talked about, and also preventing robbing, because much like with the foul brood, varroa mites can also be spread through robbing behavior. Checking at least monthly and then bi-monthly from August through October for those mites, and keeping your mite level below 3%, ideally even lower than that. Controls, you want to select a treatment that is appropriate for your operation, and you also want to change up your treatments. Don't be using the same treatment year to year, because that's how we develop resistance. That's how the varroa mites become resistant to certain chemicals. That's what we saw with checkmate and Apistan, those first two mite treatments I have on the list. That's why they're no longer in favor anymore, because the mites became resistant to them. And this is not on here, but I personally think the most impactful thing you can do for varroa mite control is do a mite check after your mite treatment. I know it seems kind of counterintuitive, but you want to make sure that that mite treatment actually worked and that you don't need to apply a second one. There could be resistant mites in your hive, or there could be just so many mites that one treatment, it knocked them down a little bit, but it didn't eradicate them. So always, always, always do a mite check when you are pulling that treatment out. Okay, threats on the horizon, y'all don't need to worry about this. This is stuff that I need to worry about, right? Hopefully last night, that varroa was bad, Trophy is the next one. It's on its way to, I suspect the main mode of entry is going to be through the border of Canada, because Canada does import packages that are very close to areas where Trophy is a known problem. It causes basically parasitic mite syndrome. It's faster than varroa. It reproduces faster. It doesn't have a phoretic stage, so it's not hanging out on adult bees. It's just always reproducing, and it is a really big problem. It is native range. Unlike varroa, where varroa is okay in its native range, If this is a problem in its native range, then it's gonna be a problem when it gets here. It's a tiny little thing, smaller than varroa. I wouldn't worry about this too much if I were y'all, but it's something that I'm gonna look out for whenever I'm doing inspections. Wasp threats, this is kind of a fun one. We got 2 wasp threats here in North America. Remember murder hornet from a couple years ago in Washington? So this will be the 3rd year that they're looking for it, and if they do not find it again this year, they can say it's been successfully eradicated. So that's good. The last seen in 2021. Yellow-legged hornet is an active situation that is happening in Georgia and South Carolina right now. That's where I'm from, so I'm kind of partial to it. Both of these hornets are very large, so larger than the quarter here, and they have very distinctive patterning. Right now, we don't do any kind of surveys for these invasive insects, so I'm really relying on the public to call in if they see something, a weird-looking hornet. There are a ton of really common lookalikes that are native and harmless. The most common one that I get reports of is this guy. This is Pigeon Tremix, and people think, oh, look at that big stinger. Look at that guy. Oh, he's terrible. It's not a stinger. It's an ovipositor. She lays eggs underneath tree bark. She's harmless. If anything, she just means that your tree's probably sick. But she's big and scary, so I get works for her. And then cicada killers are very large and do kind of have very distinctive striping, so I get reports of those as well. But they're not aggressive, they're not dangerous, they're not even very territorial. You probably have to try really hard to get stung by one. But I bring this up because, again, beekeepers are often the first line of defense when identifying these invasives. In fact, yellow-legged hornet was first identified in Georgia by a beekeeper because he noticed it hawking his bees, basically hunting his bees. Both of these wasps are also bee predators, so they pose a risk to the honeybee community. So keep your eyes peeled. If you see any strange hornets, take a picture of it, send it to me, and I'm happy to identify them. Okay, we don't have time to test your knowledge, unfortunately. Because I want to get to my last fun announcement here, which is, so this is the current map of all of the county inspectors that we have in Utah. So you see Duchesne has a county inspector, Salt Lake has a county inspector, Weber. Notably, Utah County does not have a county inspector right now. But we are working to change that, and I need y'all's help. Our very own Chris Sargent, in the back.
Back here, guys. I'll come up front here.
Chris, come on up here. Chris has been working with me this season and is going to continue training with me throughout the rest of this season to basically become the Utah County Inspector. And I am so excited to be working with Chris. He has been just a fantastic, you're able to give advice on things that I don't even know how to give advice on. Last time we did an inspection together, you gave some really stellar advice to this one on how to do a false swarm. So he's a really, you've been training under also Stan Moulton and some of these other master beekeeper types.
Bruce back here in the back too. I've been working with him a lot.
Right? But the tricky part is that we need to get the county commission on board. I've reached out to them initially and they know that Chris is in training, but the county is going to be the one employing Chris here. So where I'm asking for your help here is to basically contact your representative, contact the county commission, and tell them that you support it. Now, don't do this unless you actually believe it, but if you support Chris becoming our next Utah County Inspector, this is the contact form on the Utah County Commission website, and if they get a petition from 5 or more beekeepers, and again, squeaky wheels get grease, so as many beekeepers as we can to support this effort, I think the more success we're going to have with convincing the county that, again, this is a hugely important role.
Chris, what was your last name?
Sargent. Yeah, guys, please send some stuff in. We do need a county inspector. And I'm very happy and pleased to be able to work with you guys on this stuff.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just jump on this?
Money.
Is there's a salary with it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I would hope there would be. I'm fighting for there to be one.
I'm just wondering why it hasn't been done.
That's some counties. I blame Dave down in Washington County. He's over in Ironton in Washington. Correct me if I'm wrong, just even from over here, there is some snippets that he does for at least going back and forth through the two counties down there. Because that's a lot of space to cover.
Yeah.
So, for all of you guys who don't know me too well, I started 3 years ago. At this point, I'm in the process of working commercially. I'm at 40 colonies right now. By the end of next week, I should be at 50 plus colonies. So I've had a lot of help with where I'm at today. And everybody in here and jumping in and doing what we've done. So it's not all me, it's you guys too that help make this possible.
Just when you're filling out the form and it asks for the department, I think, do you know?
I
Or it says
actually-
regarding service/department, do you know what one to choose?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. The best one that I could come up with was, I think it's Office of Government Services,
Okay,
or something like that. That's the closest that I can think of. But that contact form is how I initially reached out to the county commission, and they got back to me. So I know they're reading the stuff that's coming in on there. They're aware that this is an issue. In fact, it's Brandon Gordon, who I've been in communication with. Where they are at now is they need a demonstrated need. They need beekeepers to petition them, and then we can start talking basically compensation and money.
Hey, do us a favor,
Yes.
as a presidency, could you outline, sorry, put this on your back, could you outline, the two of you, a purpose? And help us to understand that, and we'll disseminate this to all members in the county.
Absolutely. You want that in writing?
Huh?
You want that in writing?
Yes.
Yes. Where do I send it?
Just see it,
Send
Yes. Can I borrow that?
It might be helpful to include the information specific to Utah County that you presented at the beginning of this.
Yep.
The unique challenge of Utah County with the commercial doors, which is the obvious, and the disease burden that you see.
There's also some stuff coming up that was started this year in regards with beekeeping, just with legislation that's going on. And maybe Jenna can even pop into it a little bit more, but we're trying to keep things to where us beekeepers have a voice and say into what's going on compared to people who have no idea what's going on with beekeeping and more or less say, we don't want it, we want it gone. So having county representatives being able to be on boards and other things going through, and also helping city municipalities and everything that way, we can help people here.
We fought in several cities where 10 years early for all those rights. Some did better than others. Yep.
Yeah.
Can you prove that?